In this episode, we are going to be discussing the film noir, The Hitch-Hiker, which was released in 1953. This was directed by Ida Lupino, and it starred Edmond O'Brien, Frank Lovejoy, and William Talman. My guest today, I want to welcome back Raquel Stetcher, who has been on the podcast a couple of times to discuss pre-code films and films that took place during New Year's. We did that just on New Year's Eve last year. She is a writer and she has a fantastic blog called Out of the Past of the blog, which the link is in the description box below if you want to read her reviews. And she's got an incredible book collection and YouTube channel as well. So Raquel, welcome back. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
No, me too. It's my pleasure because I know we've discussed so many different kinds of films over the years, and this being Noirvember, I thought it was a perfect opportunity to look at another noir, and this was being directed by Ida Lupino. Who was such a fantastic filmmaker and actress herself. So before we jump into this film, I was curious what, film noir is. People have this broad definition of what film noir is. Some people feel it has to have a a femme fatale, and it has to have a doomed protagonist. And some people are looser with how it evolved. I was curious, what is film noir to you? What do you see as being noir?
See, to me, noir is like a style more so than a genre.
Yeah, I agree.
And it not everything fits perfectly into like any type of definition that people want to come up with. Some films have film noir elements and some films have a lot of noir elements. I mean, what I think of film noir is that post World War II angst. You have these kind of pessimistic films. Majority of them are black and white. You have anti-heroes, femme fatales. There's a blurring between the lines of like good and evil. Characters have like a mix of both, which I think makes it really interesting. You have lots of really great lighting, like the chiaroscuro with the dark, the shadows and the light that comes into play in a lot of films, and I love how that's done. Sometimes you have like skewed camera angles. Really close-up shots. Like I think of like He Ran All the Way, which is a great John Garfield film noir. Where the camera gets closer and closer to his face as the tension increases. But also film noir can, live in a lot of spaces. You can have a sports film noir like The Setup. You can have one with police detectives. You could have something like Double Indemnity, where it's like a romantic triangle with a murder and then voiceover in a gumshoe, or you have like The Postman Always Rings Twice, which takes place like at a roadside diner, like by the ocean. So you can place it in a lot of. It mostly takes place usually in the city, but you can put film noir pretty much everywhere. So it's a style with a lot of elements. And some films have a lot of those elements and some just have a few.
Yeah, no, I agree. I certainly feel it is more of a style as opposed to a genre. And I'm curious, with The Hitch-Hiker, how many times have you seen it? Have you seen it more than once?
I think I've seen it maybe 4 times. I watched it a couple times for this, but I had seen it. I actually have the Ida Lupino box set here.
Yes, that's incredible.
I had seen it once before getting this. I saw it for this, and then I saw it a couple of times recently. So maybe like 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
Yeah.
And has, I find, what I love about really good films is that with each viewing, if it's a good movie, it offers more. And I was curious if your feelings evolved about it with each viewing at all.
Yes. So the first time I watched, I actually had been avoiding this movie for a while because it looked terrifying. Because part of it, it's film noir, but it's also psychological horror in a way.
It is quite scary.
Because you have a serial killer and these two men are being held hostage and you don't know what's happening, and it's out in like the desert, and it's part of it's really terrifying. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. And I was actually quite I mean, I knew it was going to be good because I've heard so many good things about it, but it is scary, but I really, really enjoyed it. And I think in the recent viewing I did, I picked up on some things I hadn't picked up on before. Like the psychological terror in this film is quite potent. Because the character of Emmett, who's a serial killer, who's a hitchhiker, and he basically terrorizes everybody who picks him up on the side of the road. And it starts with like this newlywed couple who is murdered by him. So he's really terrifying. And then the fact that he's holding these two guys hostage is really terrifying. But what I noticed in this recent viewing, which was interesting and I picked up on before, is that spliced in to those terrorizing scenes are scenes of hope, where you have the Mexican police and that one American detective who is trailing them, and they're like just one step behind them. Yes. So you have, it breaks it up quite nicely, because it would be overwhelming if it was just the like psychological terror and the torture the whole time. But you have these moments where like, okay, somebody's out to find them and save these two guys. So there is hope, which I think is unusual for noir. This film is the good and evil is very clearly defined. Yeah. Emmett is clearly evil and these two guys are clearly good. Yes. And I think where the ambiguity is, because film noir always has ambiguity, that I picked up on this one, is that the two men played by Frank Lovejoy and Edmond O'Brien are not victims, but they're also not heroes. They're like a mix of both. There's times where they just break down, right? But there's also times when they try to get away, like the scene of the gas station where the guy leaves his wedding ring there as a breadcrumb, yes. Or when they try to escape him and escape the guy in the middle of the night and try to run away. But there's also times where they're just like, just kill me already. Yeah. Oh, I know. Those are the things I picked up on this recent viewing. Yeah. Yeah. I was so, you feel so bad for these guys because they're, she really doesn't hold off on the tension, because every single minute, Emmett is holding a gun to them. And the most terrifying aspect of that was even at night when, because he had a bad eye, so it wouldn't close shut. So you couldn't really tell whether he was sleeping or not, because he was like sleeping like this. Yeah, like literally sleeping with one eye open. So he's got the gun to them. And I kept thinking, that is so noir, because it's night and clearly can't sleep. You got a gun to your head, the anxiety with that in this like middle of the desert, middle of nowhere. And that guy at any minute can just pull that trigger even accidentally, particularly when you're sleeping and holding a gun. So you never really know when he's sleeping or not. And I just found that so terrifying. And yeah, every single moment of the film is those guys are just, as you said, they're helpless. There's nothing they can do about it. And they didn't really have many opportunities to leave. Now, he even points out, oh, well, you guys had your chances, but the problem is you kept thinking about each other, which I really liked, because often in noir, characters are only thinking about themselves. There's a lot of selfishness and people after money. And in this film, we saw this, we don't know so much about their friendship. They're these guys going on a road trip. They're both World War II veterans. Off the top, he points out that, oh, this is the first time since the war that I've been away from my wife and kids. And that just made you feel even worse for them, because you think, God, like this is like them. You need a break. Yeah, like reliving that experience all over again. But I like that they clearly had
a bond for each other, and they weren't going to sell each other out, which is something that you didn't really see strong relationships in noir. I'm not sure if that was something that popped out to you.
Yeah, it did. And I thought it was interesting that it's noticeable with Gil that he has a tie to his wife and kids.
Yeah.
Because you see it with the scene with the little girl at the shop.
Yes, I love that.
And that she reminds him of his children at home. And then the wedding ring obviously is a reminder that he has a wife, you know, so he can't do anything stupid or rash, because if he dies, then he's going to abandon
that's right.
his family waiting for him. So he has that tie. Plus, as you said, they're good friends, so they kind of have to help each other. And that scene where the serial killer is having Gil, played by Frank Lovejoy, practice gun
target shooting,
target shooting at Roy, and Roy has to hold like a can near his head, and you're like, this is a real test of their friendship and whether they're going to protect each other. And they do the whole time. They stick together the entire time, which, like you said, it's not that individualistic. They're thinking of each other.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That scene was particularly nerve-wracking, and she even uses the POV shot, and Frank Lovejoy with the gun in his hand, and it was his POV, so you literally see, and he was getting anxious and stopping and you know, trying to compose himself. And again, it just plays so much on the psychological torture. Like Talman is just as Emmett Myers was just enjoying every minute of, you know, torturing these guys. And he doesn't do it in a sense where he's hitting them. I mean, he hits Edmond O'Brien once, but he's not like hitting them physically, but it's just the matter of he is basically controlling them the whole time. Their life is in his hands, literally. And just having that gun to them is enough psychological torture. But, you know, one thing that popped out to me this time, that on the first viewing, the first time I saw this, that it didn't really dawn on me, because I kept thinking, why does he really need to take these guys with him? Because he needs the car, he needs money. So if he's trying to, like, you know, get out of the country, as he is, because he's on the run, I really couldn't figure out why he needed them. And I had some ideas as to why that might be, but I was curious as to why you think he brought these guys along.
Yeah, I mean, there was an interesting scene where he talks about his background, and he said that his parents weren't there for him, and he was always on his own, and that he held power when he had a gun. So he found he found he could make people do things once he held them, you know, at the end of a gun, essentially.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking, is that he lacks a sense of control. He broke out of prison. There's a nationwide like manhunt for him, or like cross desert into another country manhunt for him. So he knows he's in trouble, but he knows he can have power over these two guys if he holds them hostage. So I think it's a power thing.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought like it's more about who he was, because he's controlling them, he's torturing them psychologically, and at the same time, he's enjoying this so much. I mean, he's totally psychotic. And when he's finally caught in the end, you suddenly see him in an entirely different light. I mean, even the fact that they put the cuffs on him and he just kind of bursts out in anger. He was a different person all of a sudden, just visually seeing him with those cuffs. And then Edmond O'Brien finally, you know, you could feel their anger building and, you know, a couple of times really losing their temper on him. And you know, you're right with Edmond O'Brien with those punches. Like you feel like you want to punch him, and I think that's why it works so well, because I feel everything that the two guys are experiencing. And what I really like about it is that there's not like a lot of twists and turns in terms of plot. It's not like we saw them repeatedly try to get away, or we saw like car chases, or, you know, stuff that I think other filmmakers may have been tempted to do to quote unquote make it more interesting or plot driven. It's really with the exception of what you mentioned, cutting to the police after them. It's really just these three guys and the emotional experience of what that is like being captive by him. And they don't even necessarily, you know, when you think back, there isn't even necessarily a lot of dialogue between them. It's like, okay, it's just him ordering them around, like that meant, you know, you mentioned at the grocery store, getting the food, you know, fixing the tire. And there isn't a lot of quote unquote incidents like I think a lot of on a more conventional film would have been tempted to do. And I thought that worked so much better because I'm experiencing it more emotionally as a result. I don't know if that was your experience.
Yeah, I mean, you're really experiencing it in real time. Even when they cut to the authorities, like kind of trailing them, it's still in real time. There's no flashbacks. It's a very linear story.
Yeah,
and you're right. There's a lot that happens, kind of in the quiet spaces of it. I mean, some of the performances by the three main actors, like William Talman is just so terrifying.
Oh yeah.
As the serial killer, especially those scenes where you think he's sleeping, but you're not quite sure, and his eyes open.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's like nightmare inducing.
And then it was so scary.
Frank Lovejoy did a good job kind of showing more, maybe like a more sensitive male character who, like I said earlier, has his family back home, and he's really, you could see like the concern on his face. And then Edmond O'Brien, who I had heard some commentary recently about how he was not scared to look kind of pathetic on screen,
right?
Or to show himself as a victim who was suffering, or like and has that total breakdown when the helicopter is flying above or the plane, and he just has a breakdown, and he's just like perfect for that because he's not scared of putting himself in a role where maybe the preconceived notions of like masculinity are kind of set aside, and he's just breaking down like, please help us, and he does a really good job with that. So I feel like the three characters suited the three actors very well. And so when we're in scenes with them throughout the film, we just feel everything. It's just really powerful.
Yeah, I agree. The performances were stunning. And I think the fact that we had Ida Lupino directing it is probably why we saw men in these different, you know, in this different emotions and behavior and feeling helpless or as a victim, or not being able to use violence or take control or be quote unquote macho or tough. Like we don't see that in a lot of noirs with men. And I think it's really interesting to have Ida Lupino direct this and also co-write the script, and just seeing a lot of different sides. And of course, this was like loosely based on a true story.
And I have to say, Ida Lupino, amazing, like director. She and her ex-husband at the time, but they started a production company, the filmmakers, together. So she was producing, she was writing original scripts with her ex-husband. She was directing these films. He was producing them. It was just like all kind of born out of her like work. I mean, these are totally stamped Ida Lupino films. And what I think is interesting is that she met one of the actual guys who was kidnapped. And she was really intrigued by his story, and she wanted to talk to the actual serial killer, Billy Cook, who was at San Quentin, and she went over and talked to him. I mean,
really?
that's terrifying.
I didn't know that. Wow.
She tried to get permission to use his name and the names of the victims in the movie and tell it like a true story, but the FBI got involved, and they're like, no, we can't have him benefit. Okay. We can't have this killer benefit from his story, even if he's not getting paid.
Right.
But the fact that she was so ballsy that she went to go interview a serial killer, because I think that is amazing for anybody. But as a woman too, in the time that she was living, to be so such an entrepreneur and so fearless is really admirable.
Yeah. No, I agree. I read that last night because I believe Billy Cook, like he was put to death. Like this was, as you said, like he was a serial killer. He was a awful psychotic murderer. And I did not know that she actually went to meet him. Wow, that's quite
kind of reminds me of like Truman Capote did that too with In Cold Blood.
That's right.
To the prison. So I'm just like so in admiration of how like invested she was in this story to really go for it. And a lot of her stories that like the films that she directed were inspired by true stories or issues that were happening at the time. Like everyone knew the Billy Cook story. Right. She has a movie on polio, one on rape. These are like serious issues that she was tackling.
Yeah, I know. I still have to see the other films she directed, and you're right. They were all like they were often low budget, and they centered around issues, and often centered around women, with the exception of this film. So, but I think it's really interesting to see it told through a woman's perspective. And William Talman was incredible in this. I don't think I've seen him in anything else. I don't know if you have. I know he died young.
In Perry Mason.
Oh, the show, yeah.
Yeah, but other than that, I know he was in a film with Ida Lupino before, so they knew each other before. But yeah, I'm not as familiar. This is like the one performance that I think of when I think of him, because it's just, and also I think it's considered one of his best performances. It's really good. Yeah. Edmond O'Brien, though, I'm a huge fan of.
Oh, he's great. Yeah.
DOA is one of my favorite film noirs. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And I just recently reviewed The Killers. And
it's a good one.
Barefoot Contessa I'm doing again. I'm going to do that soon. And I hadn't seen it before. And he was so perfect as like this public relations guy. He was so full of it, and it was so effective.
He can play like schmarmy characters. Like, yeah. And Frank Lovejoy, I had rewatched In a Lonely Place recently, a great film noir with Humphrey Bogart and Gloria Graham. And he's got a small role, but it's an important role in that. So, they're all pretty great. Although Edmond O'Brien's my favorite of the bunch.
Oh, me too, yeah. No, he was a fantastic actor. Just looking at that box set, have you seen all of those films?
Yes, I have a review on my site with great. All of them. And so I'll just show quickly the ones that are in here. So we have The Hitch-Hiker.
Okay, great. Yeah.
And then Not Wanted, which was her, she took over for a director who fell ill. I think he might have died during filming. This is about a young unwed mother and how unwed mothers were treated at the time.
Oh, right.
I think that's really interesting. And her sister is in this film, and her sister's also in this film too, Never Fear. This one I've actually written about for a book that's available on Amazon. It's called The Ida Lupino Files, and it's all female writers writing about one Ida Lupino film. And this is the one I wrote about, Never Fear. And this is about polio. And it's interesting because Ida Lupino had polio a long time before, when there was like a breakout in the 1930s in California. And she was like partially paralyzed for a while, and it took her a while to overcome it.
I did not know that.
And this unfortunately came out at a time when, fortunately, unfortunately, like it didn't do very well because it's kind of a heavy subject, like polio is not like, you're not going to rush to the theater to watch a polio movie.
Right.
But also the polio vaccine came out exactly around the same time. So no one was like, oh, polio's not really a thing anymore. We have the vaccine.
Wow.
But it was a personal project for her, considering her past with the illness. And so this is a pretty good one. And then the other one, which also has Edmond O'Brien, and this one I think is super interesting, The Bigamist.
Yes, I still have to see that.
I believe it's in the public domain, like The Hitch-Hiker, so it's like readily available.
Yes,
This one, she and Collier Young, her ex-husband, wrote it. Collier Young was married to Joan Fontaine at the time. So that must have been a very awkward scenario. But it's about, Edmond O'Brien plays this businessman. I forget what he did, maybe insurance or something. And he has a wife at home, Joan Fontaine, and a girlfriend in the city, Ida Lupino. So he lives like kind of these two lives with these two relationships.
So that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting and kind of amazing that this got made.
Yeah.
Because I believe it's still illegal in the United States.
Wow. I'll have to see that. Yeah, because I know it's on Canopy, I believe. I think it's been going off and on Criterion Channel, but that looks like a great box set, and that's Kino Lorber, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's the Kino Lorber set with 4, and it's got like a little booklet too. Yeah, I highly recommend this.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna get that. That looks really, really cool. Yeah, and you did a review on it. You said.
Yes, I did a review, and I have like little mini reviews of each movie in it.
Okay, great. So I'll leave the link to that in the description box below. Was there anything else you wanted to mention about this film, Raquel?
Yes, I have to say this is actually one of maybe a handful of desert noirs, because usually noirs happen in like an urban setting. So I think this is really interesting. It was filmed in Lone Pine, California, which was the site of a lot of Westerns. In fact, Lone Pine actually has a film festival every year where you go, you watch the movie, and then you go look at the actual site where the film was actually recorded. Like you could, they have like horses and stuff, and they'll like guides will take you out. I've never been, but I've always wanted to go. My friend Laura of Laura's Miscellaneous Musings goes every year. She has great photos and cool. Recounts of that festival. So I think that's super interesting. Desert Noir. There are other examples like High Sierra, which IDA Lupino is in, and also Desert Fury, which is a fantastic color noir with like some gay subtext too, and it's kind of campy. I've heard of that. It's kind of fun, but it's also kind of dark too, and that's an example of a desert noir. But I think this one stands out, the fact that it takes place in like kind of this desolate area, and they're also in another country too. They're traveling over to Mexico.
That's right.
But they're completely out in the open, which I think is interesting. And another thing I picked up on this viewing, which I think is interesting, is a terror element that they added where, so they're being held hostage, but no one they encounter knows that they're being held hostage, which adds another layer. There was like this warning at the very beginning of the movie, like, be careful of hitchhikers. This is a true story. It could happen to you, kind of thing. And then you see these just real life bystanders encountering the serial killer. He's in the grocery store. He's like at the gas station. He's like in their sphere. So that adds like an element of like fear that I thought was super effective.
Yeah, I know. But particularly as you mentioned, the desert and just and always being in that car as well. Just that feeling of loneliness and claustrophobic and isolation and just.
And the car keeps breaking down.
Yeah,
like the horn doesn't work anymore, and then it's leaking, and
it all added so much to the terror of the film. But that's a really good point to bring up. Well, Raquel, thanks so much. I really appreciate that you took the time to come on again and talk about a noir this time. So please come again and tell us where's the best place to find you online.
So I have a blog called Out of the Past, which you can find at outofthepastblog.com. And I also have a YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com/outofthepastblog, or you just look up Out of the Past blog on YouTube, I have a channel there. I'm uploading once a week right now. Every Saturday, I have a new video, and I'm hoping to keep that going and maybe increase that a little bit. You can also find me on Twitter, just at my name, Raquel Stetcher, and I have a blog about new movies called Kel Movies.
Awesome. Great. And I will leave the links in the description box below for where you can get in touch with Raquel and where you can check out her blog and her YouTube channel. And for those of you who may be only listening to this right now, because there's also an audio version of this podcast, you can find the audio version on any of the platforms where audio podcast can be found, but not everything that is on the YouTube channel is on the audio version. So if you want to hear more, head over to the YouTube channel. And for those of you watching on YouTube now, and it's your first time here, please consider subscribing by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the Movies logo. You'll see it floating above my head right here to your top left. Just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new videos or when I go live. Raquel, thanks again so much. And
Thank you. This was fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
And we'll see everybody in the next episode.